Forza Motorsport includes a wide range of options for players to customise how they play. These settings may improve the motor accessibility of the game for players. The game is available on Xbox Series X and S consoles and on Windows PC. The driving assists can be used in single-player races and also in featured multiplayer events online. In this video, we're going to have a look at the braking, gas and steering assists found in the driving assists menu. These assists can enable the player to use certain inputs less frequently or remove the need to use them altogether. For example, having steering set to fully assisted would mean that the player would not need to steer at all when playing. In this video, we will have a look at each of these settings, share the developers' descriptions of them, and have a look at them in gameplay. We will also cover a few other useful settings which may be helpful alongside these assists. There are many actions in the game which take up most of the required buttons and joystick directions on a controller. However, the required core inputs to race are steering, gas and brake. By default, you use left stick for steering, left trigger for braking and right trigger for gas, but these can be remapped. We'll be focusing on using a controller such as an Xbox wireless controller or an Xbox adaptive controller to play the game. However, the game can also be played using a keyboard or a compatible steering wheel. Pressing X from the main menu will access these settings, and you can also access them before any race or by pausing the game at any time. It is worth noting that having certain assists on may mean that players are more likely to make contact with other drivers. For example, having fully assisted steering on means that players are more likely to collide with other cars who are also on the racing line. They may also be more likely to experience collisions when using fully assisted braking and there are other cars directly behind them when braking. There are several different driving assist presets, and each of these can be customised to fit the player's needs. The Global Assists preset option allows you to adjust multiple assists by changing just one setting. The available settings are maximum assists, heavy assists, moderate assists, balanced assists, light assists, and minimum assists. You can then customise each of these presets to tailor the settings to you. The default setting is heavy assists, which is recommended when starting the game. This default sets the braking and steering assists to partially assisted. When changing the preset to maximum assists, this would change the braking and steering assists to fully assisted. We will explain the difference between these when going through braking and steering assists. Adjusting the brake assist setting sets the amount of support you will get with braking. This will alter how much you need to use the brake input yourself. You can still apply the brake manually at any point if using any one of the assists. The following settings are available to choose from. When a driver approaches a corner, this system automatically sets the appropriate level of brakes to get the driver through the turn. In addition, this system applies the brakes in certain circumstances to help drivers avoid rear-ending other cars. However, this can make it more challenging to pass other cars. When a driver approaches a corner, this system automatically applies the correct amount of brakes to help the driver get through the turn. When a driver applies the brakes, this system pulses the brakes automatically to make sure that they don't lock up. The driver is in full control of the braking force. If the brakes are applied with too much force, they will lock up. As drivers master braking, they will find that this can lead to faster races. Here I have braking set to partially assisted, which is helping me get around corners but will not stop me from rear-ending other cars. I could still brake manually by pressing the brake input, which is left trigger by default. Putting car-to-car collisions to off can help with this, as it means that cars will go through each other rather than crashing into each other. This option is found in the accessibility settings under blind driving assists. Here I am changing the brakes to fully assisted, which helps avoid crashes by applying the brakes to stop us from rear-ending other vehicles. However, this does make overtaking more difficult. I'm using left stick to steer and right trigger for gas to control throttle, which are the default controls when using a standard controller. Steering is still partially assisted. The Throttle Assist option allows you to choose whether you will use the gas input yourself or allow this to be applied automatically. You can still accelerate manually to supplement this action. The following settings are available to choose from. The driver has full control of the throttle. When not needing to slow down for a corner, this option applies the throttle automatically. This means that the driver doesn't need to hold the input down, helping to reduce muscle tension and fatigue. Here I'm driving with the Throttle Assist set to assisted, meaning I'm not having to use the gas input at all. The inputs I am using are left stick for steering and left trigger for brakes. Both of these are still partially assisted. The car will accelerate even if other cars are in front, so players will need to apply the brakes and use steering to overtake them. Having the braking assists on, or also using car-to-car collision set to off, can also help with this. You can still apply the gas manually to control the throttle, if for example you wanted to overtake in a situation where the assist wouldn't attempt it. The steering assist option allows you to choose how much support you will receive with the steering input. This ranges from steering with full control, using left stick by default, to not needing to use an input at all. This provides some guidance to the driver's steering, but only when necessary. Note that this has no effect when using a force feedback input device. This gives the driver full control over steering, but dampens certain physical effects to make driving easier. This eliminates any damping and steering speed assistance. This creates a more realistic effect, making counter steering quicker. Please note this mode is difficult with the controller and is recommended for more experienced drivers. This provides strong guidance to help keep the car near the suggested line. Note that this has no effect when using a force feedback device. Here I am driving with fully assisted steering. No matter what your car's starting position, you will notice that the car immediately pulls to the suggested racing line across the track. The car will then stay with the suggested line and the player will not need to steer. However, you may wish to do so to avoid other cars or to overtake, where you do need to come off the driving line. I am braking using left trigger, which is partially assisted, and using right trigger for throttle to control the gas. There may be instances where a certain car on a specific corner of a track where the assist isn't applied. Here, this Aston Martin on this specific corner of the Suzuka circuit track, the car stops following the racing line and drifts off the track. Players who may benefit from these assists may also find it helpful to keep traction and stability control assists set to on. Having gear shifting set to automatic means that players do not need extra inputs for shifting gears up and down. Going to the advanced controller settings allows you to adjust multiple different dead zones. Inside and outside dead zone options are available for actions that are analog. These include steering and acceleration. For instance, when steering using an analog stick, if you decrease the inside dead zone, less movement of the stick is required for the car to start turning. Increasing it means that more movement of the stick is required for the car to start turning. Decreasing the outside dead zone for steering will mean that less input is needed to reach the full activation, whilst increasing it will mean more movement is required. When starting a race or event, you have the option to set AI difficulty from 1 to 8, with 8 being the most difficult. Here you can also adjust the rule set for that race, using club rules, sport rules or expert rules. Adjusting the rules changes whether damage affects the performance of the car or is just cosmetic. This also affects how severe penalties are. It also determines whether or not you can use the rewind button in that event. Rewind can be useful as it allows you to attempt to correct mistakes made during a race. By default, you press Y to rewind. There are 15 different default controller layouts. Players have the option to choose one of these layouts. They also have the option to customize any of these by pressing A on the input that they would like to swap. Pressing the input they would like to change it to would then remap this control. For example, here we are on layout 1, and we are changing gas from right trigger to up on the left stick. We will also swap brake from left trigger to down on the left stick. This means we can now accelerate, brake and steer all on the left stick, reducing the number of inputs required to play the game. There is also the option to go to copyable blank layout and map controls onto a blank template. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like any more information about accessibility settings in games, or would like help with an alternative controller, please contact SpecialEffect.